Hey, everybody. I hope and pray that you're doing well today as we come to our word from the Word. And today that word is realization. Realization. Now, here's the thing. Today is we're going to find out that Joseph has had a realization already, and now he's going to share it with his brothers. Now, we saw yesterday in the end of chapter 44 where Judah is willing to step in and take the place of his brother. It is that first step to repairing that relationship, because when Joseph sees it and he sees his sincerity, he breaks down, weeps, sends everybody out except his brothers. So it's just him and his brothers together, and he reveals to them who he is. There's silence. You can imagine when he says, "I'm Joseph." They all kind of look at each other like, "Joseph who?" Remember, he doesn't look, obviously, they hadn't realized it was him before this. He wasn't speaking like them. He was using a translator. He didn't look like them. He was a teenager. It's been 13 years. Everybody's changed. And yet, when he reveals himself to them, you can imagine the shock. You can imagine the fear of what was coming next, because now, hey, he's going to get us back. He has all this power. You can imagine all the things that were running through their mind. Man, dad's going to find out. All these things. And notice what Joseph says. Let's pick it up in verse 4 as he's speaking to his brothers, and we'll read down to verse 8 of Genesis 45 today. And Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near to me." So they came near. Then he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years the famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by great deliverance. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and Lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt." Joseph, at some point, has realized this is why all of these things happen. He's gotten through all of the pain and suffering of those years. 13 years for it to be fulfilled. Now 2 more years, so 15 years. Just imagine in that amount of time, how many times Joseph wondered. And I wonder how far into the famine it took him before he realized it. This is why God brought me here. And I would really say it probably wasn't until the brothers showed up that he maybe began to realize. I'm sure he realized it when, as he says, first to preserve life. It wasn't just the life of his family, but the life of all those. I mean, even in Egypt. When the brothers showed up, and I wonder at times why he didn't try to go back home to let them know, hey, here's where the food is. Hey, y'all come here. It wasn't until the brothers came there. Now, that's something that maybe we'll never know. It wasn't God's plan. God's plan was to bring the brothers there for a need, that they would see their desire to humble them, to work on them. But then when they come before Joseph, right, he's already had the realization. And at this point, there's no way that he could have just forgiven them in word. He's already forgiven them in his heart, because he's already had the realization that it wasn't them, it was God. As he says at the end, after Jacob dies, and we've talked about this before, in Genesis 50, right? He says, and we'll look at this again, I'm sure, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. And again, I wonder how long it took him maybe into his time with Pharaoh before he realized why he had to go through everything. But here's the question I would ask you today. Have you had that realization yet? Have you, and it's not just a once and done. It's not just like, oh, this is why I had to go through this valley so God could teach me this. It happens over and over again. But do we ever take the time to recognize and to give God the glory? Several times in this passage, Joseph tells his brothers, look, don't be upset with yourselves. Don't worry about it. Don't beat each other up about it. Don't even beat yourself up about it because of what you've done and the way that you've lied and the way that you treated me is what he said. God has done this. He was essentially giving God credit for putting him in the pit, giving God credit for having him sold into slavery, giving God credit for having him as a slave and then as a prisoner, to be falsely accused, to put into prison, to then give dreams to two guys who one dies and one doesn't remember him, to only later give the dream, the interpretation of a dream to Pharaoh to be put in place, to then see out and oversee, rather, the way that dream would come to fruition, and then to deal with his brothers and to save not just the land of Egypt, but also the nation of Israel that was going to come through his father and his brothers and his family. It was to preserve not just life of people in general, but it was also one step further than that. It was a realization that he was fulfilling and preserving the life of the promise that God had given to his father and to his grandfather many years before. And the fact that he finally got to that point to realize it is how he could look at his brothers and say, I can't be mad at you because God has done it all. And there's so many times that we hold grudges against people and we hold things against them and we hold them over their heads and we hold on to bitterness and we hold on to anger and animosity forever. And yet we've failed to come to the realization that God has allowed it, and at times God has caused it because he was making us who he wanted us to be. He was putting us in a place where he could use us for his glory and for his honor. And yes, the paths that we have taken has sometimes been mighty crooked, and they've been mighty rocky, and they've been uphill and downhill and road closed. And man, we've taken detours, God ordained detours, and ones that we just decided to take on our own, and he had to jerk us back in line to get us back where we needed to go. But if we never take the time to realize the sovereignty of God, we are going to find out that after years, and we may look back over a lifetime and say, man, it's all a waste and I don't understand the reason. And it's because we have missed out on the realization that God has placed you, God has placed me, God has placed us in this moment in time, at whatever stage of life that you're at right now, whatever trials and tribulations you're going through right now. It is all for his glory. It's all for his honor. It's all working together for his plan. And even if you can't see that right now, even if you're like Joseph down in the pit, even if you're like Joseph in the dungeon, even if you're like Joseph second in command, understand this. God has ordained it. God is overseeing it. And God's will be accomplished. Isn't that what he tells us to pray? That his will would be done here on earth just as it is in heaven. When we come to the realization that God has not abandoned his throne, that God has not relinquished control, then we will begin to understand and we will begin to realize there's so much more going on in this life than we've ever realized before. Something for us all to think about today. God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.